Hey folks, it's KJ here, and we're doing a select rebroadcast today of one from a few years ago that includes an old-time Bigfoot sighting from the 1800s and a modern-day sighting in Manitoba, Canada. I hope you enjoy it, and I can't wait to catch up with you live in the near future. Thanks for listening.
Hey Kev, let's follow this trail over here. This looks like there might be something waiting down there.
All right. Hey, wait a minute. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was just me. What the heck is that?
I don't know what that is. Whoa, do you smell that too?
That's unbelievable. Hey, look.
What the?
Hey, look, those branches are moving over there.
What the heck is that?
Holy cow, is that what I think it is? Look at that thing.
Oh my God.
It's a freaking Sasquatch. Welcome to the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. I'm your host, W.J. Sheehan. Hello, everyone, and thank you once again for joining us for what is going to be a fantastic show. My name is W.J. Sheehan, and I have authored a series of books entitled Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters, 9 volumes that are available at Amazon in paperback and ebook, so please go out and buy some. And also, volumes 1 through 8 are on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon as well in Audible or audio format. So please go out, partake of a few of them, and you'll be doing a great deal to help us. And now, my brother and co-host, KJ Sheehan. KJ, how are you?
What's going on, Bill?
Well, as you know, my wife is in the hospital, and folks, keep praying for her. Her name is Paula. She's going down a rough road, but this too shall pass. So that's been kind of consuming a lot of my time, brother.
Yeah, I know. That's a big challenge, and we're all praying for her, and I think she's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And of course, we're in the clutches of January now. It's not too bad, but you know how January and February can be. We're going to go down to like, we're probably already at like 9 or 10 today.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. And thankfully we have a big rain system coming in, but the projection is that we'll be getting rain. The temps are going to jump up to 38, 45, something like that. Snow will be north of us up in the hills, Adirondacks, that kind of place. But it's not my favorite time of year.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is the days are getting longer. I mean, down here in North Carolina, it's right around freezing today. And as I mentioned to you right before this recording, we're bracing for, what we lovingly call Snowmageddon in Raleigh, North Carolina. So it's either going to be like 4 or 5 inches of snow or like 1 or 2 inches of ice. So we're cheering for the snow, because when we get an inch of ice, boy, we lose electricity for a week. It's bad.
Yeah. And didn't you tell me once, Kev, there's like one snowplow?
Yeah, well, that's really just on display at the traffic department. I don't think it has a motor in it. It just sits out front there.
Oh, brother. That is freaking. No, you're right, though. And my favorite day of this wintry season is like the winter solstice, when I know we're gaining a minute of daylight every day from that point forward.
Absolutely. And the days are getting longer. I look at it each day on my phone, when sunset is and when sunrise is, and we're headed the right direction, Bill. So hang in there.
Yeah, that's a good thing, I was talking to my buddy, a fan of the podcast. Another great thing about the podcast, Kev, is some little friendships that have developed out of talking to people, and I touch base with them here and there. And our buddy Jonathan up in BC, British Columbia area. I was talking to him the other night, and it was some ridiculous temperature.
Oh, yeah. I was talking to some of the guys I work with up there yesterday. It was like minus 30 Celsius, which I guess when it gets to like minus 40 Celsius, it doesn't matter whether it's Celsius or Fahrenheit. Like it converges down there. So that is wicked cold. I mean,
yeah, and he told me that they have heaters on their vehicles.
Oh yeah, you plug them in. You have to.
Yeah, just to make sure the motor will turn over.
Oh yeah, I mean I've been up there when it's minus 40 in Alberta, and I'm telling you, Bill, it is like that first breath you take. It's the coldest air you ever felt. Like, it's just like, oh, my God. Like, what is this?
Yeah, you know, the heater used to be used mainly on diesels.
Yep.
You know, the trucks always had heaters when they were parked in lots or at depots. And if you had a diesel car, a lot of them had a heater that you would plug into the garage or something. Yeah,
well, they all have of course they're burning kerosene, which is not as flammable as gasoline. And then they don't have spark plugs, right? They have glow plugs. So it's all kicked off by very high compression, kicks off the combustion. So if it's wicked cold, it's not enough to kick off combustion. Let alone all of the oil getting hard at minus 40. You know, you probably couldn't turn the crank over anyway.
Yeah. And you remember that's what killed the Nazis outside of Stalingrad. They in their...
I thought it was the U.S. Air Force. Oh, no, I'm just kidding.
But you remember they had decided their attack would be in the winter.
Yeah.
And all of their equipment was freezing up and coming to a screeching halt. And
they would blitz. You know, like, of course, they had the blitz down with the equipment. But, you know, the soldiers were following them on foot, you know, freezing to death, riding horses and stuff where they could find a horse, like ridiculous, you know.
Yeah, so.
But good for them. Good for them.
Yeah, good for them and their failure.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer bunch of guys.
Yeah.
All right, Bill. Well, we're going back to one of my favorites of all time because I happened to come across some more information about him.
Ah, excellent. What are we digging into today?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorites of all time for a couple of reasons. One is it's old, from the 1800s. It's well documented. And 3, which I didn't say 2, but 2 was well documented. And 3, it involves this mysterious superhero-like creature.
So, and who might that be?
So we're going to talk about Spring-Heeled Jack one more time.
I knew it.
Oh yeah,
I knew it.
We covered him once a long time ago, but as I said, I came across some new information on him. So we'll do a little bit of a review. Okay. So we'll jump right in. And, you know, this story of Spring-Heeled Jack, it comes, basically out of the UK. And it's the tale of this creature or devil-like figure that terrorized the nation for more than 60 years. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the story would go, you know, back, and this is in the early 1800s, started out, that this devil-like figure would leap from rooftop to rooftop, from the street to the roof of a building, and vice versa. And everybody was talking about it, but it got a lot more recognition, and in fact received official recognition when someone was attacked in January of 1838. Mm-hmm. So this woman, Polly Adams, was attacked while crossing the street in South London. And a woman saw it. This other woman, Mary Stevens, saw on the common there, and the woman was assaulted. So pretty scary. So the picture of this.
Yeah, so there was a witness.
Oh yeah.
There was a witness. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And several documented attacks. So the one witness described her, what she called an inhuman attacker, that he was wearing a kind of helmet, a tight-fitting white costume, like an oilskin, and get this, Bill, he vomited blue and white flames.
What a freaking... I mean, it's so out of the box bizarre.
Oh, I know. It's why it's one of my favorites.
and in the early 1800s, visualize seeing this going on with the garb worn of that day by men and women, and to have this guy with like a helmet and a skin tight suit on, you know,
like an oil skin, and then if that's not freaky enough, he had like these red glowing eyes and kind of like metal claw hands, and then he could vomit these blue flames.
I mean, you can't make it up any. It's just like pick a bunch of weird stuff and throw it in a bag and pick out what your creature's going to be, you know?
Yep. So at that time, the mayor of London, Sir John Cowan, he received lots of complaints about this, documented complaints around London, describing a demonic creature with eyes like balls of fire and hands like icy claws that had the ability to jump from rooftop to rooftop. And the police, there were enough of these complaints coming in, you know, from enough reputable people that the police didn't dismiss these stories. Yeah. And even the gentlemanly Duke of Wellington, although he was almost 70 years old, he went out armed on horseback to hunt and kill the monster. So he was carrying more gun than he thought he would need, even in London.
Well, when you're the Duke, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, you know, especially if you're hunting a demonic creature. So, and then, you know, in going further in time, in the 1850s and 1860s, he was seen all over England, but in particular around the central part of England. So, and then in 1870, the army actually, right, the army of the UK set traps to catch spring-heeled Jack.
Jeez,
and, you know, they used to have these sentry boxes, right, Bill, like kind of like around town. They still have them, in fact, of course, but the guys are carrying automatic weapons around London when they go into one of these boxes. But they'd have these sentry boxes, kind of like a phone booth where they could seek some shelter, I guess, you know, during the night while they're on post. And one of these sentry was in the sentry box, and he reported being terrified by a man who sprang from a roof onto the top of the sentry box. So it sounds like Spring-Heeled Jack was having a little fun with the army as well.
Yeah, he did. He was indiscriminate. He didn't care who you were.
Yeah.
He or it or whatever that Spring-Heel was, you know.
Right.
What a name. I wonder who actually gave him the name. It must have been like a newspaper columnist that named it Spring-Heeled Jack.
It does sound like that, right?
Yeah.
So, and then in 1870, so this is towards the end of the reign of Spring-Heeled Jack, some of the townspeople in a part of the UK called Lincoln, it's documented that they shot at him in the street, but he basically just laughed and sprung away, leaping over fences and even a couple of small homes.
Wow.
So seems to be either they're not good shots or he also isn't affected by bullets.
Yeah, and leaping over a couple of small homes, like they were an easy hop.
Exactly. And Spring-Heeled Jack was last seen, so he had quite a reign, in 1904 in one of your favorite cities, Bill, Liverpool.
Oh.
And when he was in Liverpool, he was bounding up and down the streets, leaping from the cobblestone streets to rooftops and back down to the cobblestone streets.
I mean, we're talking about something. It's almost like Spider-Man flight.
Oh, yeah, yeah, very similar. That's why, if you remember, right, so I said at the time that there was a rumor back then that this Marquis, right, very wealthy guy, the Marquis of Waterford, was viewed that somehow people were like, the guy was kind of eccentric, and you know what eccentric meant back then, Bill?
Yeah, crazy.
Crazy, but had a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's the difference between crazy and eccentric by my definition.
Right.
But they even called the Marquis of Waterford the Mad Marquis. Like that was a bit of his moniker. And so there was a rumor that it might be him, but the length of time that this went on, actually, so Spring Heel Jack was seen after the Marquis passed away. Mm-hmm. But, when I did some more research on this recently, they keep talking about this Marquis de Waterford as being pretty crazy and rambunctious, and that basically he ran around with like a little posse, in modern day lingo, and they were always like out, like getting completely drunk and causing all kinds of trouble, and getting in trouble either with the lady folk of the aristocracy, or definitely with law enforcement.
Yeah, but Kev, you can't. They could say they think this guy is a kook, but what was going on here was superhuman. Nobody's jumping over small houses and from rooftops down onto the street and running away. I mean, you could have a broken leg. You're going to get hurt. You're not blowing out flame balls out of your mouth either.
Well, so listen, this is the extra information that I got. So two or three pieces. Like, one is that the guy was a troublemaker, and he was always out causing trouble. And I'll tell you one of the stories about him causing trouble too in a minute. He was always, chasing girls and getting in trouble with women, generally speaking, and always getting in trouble with the law. And then some of the folks that he hung out with apparently were experts in what they called applied mechanics back then. Mm-hmm. All right. And there's discussion that he actually and his friends practiced fire spitting techniques.
So
Marquis de Waterford. Yeah. So some of his friends were experts in applied mechanics, his crazy friends, and then there's documentation that they practice fire spitting techniques. Putting flammable stuff in their mouth, spitting it out, lighting it on fire in some way. And then in one of the attacks in Ashworth, it's documented that a servant boy saw a W letter on the Spring Heel Jack's chest, which would be the moniker of the Marquis de Waterford.
Right, but of course it doesn't explain the ongoing stuff after his death.
No, I know, but the theory is that like he hung out with all of these guys, and they were all troublemakers. So to me, it's like just because he passed away, maybe some of his pals were a lot younger than him,
and they carried on.
And it's viewed that he did this to torment the police, law enforcement, whatever they called them back then. And also, some of the women that may have not been happy with his behavior. Because he didn't really hurt anybody, but he went around and, didn't hurt them seriously, but he definitely went around and tormented everybody.
I just want to say something about, do you remember the old Robin Hood movie with Errol Flynn?
Yeah.
All right, so you remember there would be a scene here or there where he got caught up in a castle and everybody would be running around and he'd evade them by leaping over a staircase and swinging on the cords from some draperies and grabbing a lamp. And, he made it look easy, all of this acrobatics, evading everybody.
Yep.
I'm trying to visualize even a human being being able, though, to flip themselves around on houses. Now, back then, I don't think they had beefy rain gutters.
No, but Bill, who knows how much it really happened? Like you and I are picturing them like jumping from my backyard up a 2.5-story house and landing on the roof and jumping into the front yard. But maybe it wasn't quite like that, right?
Yeah.
You're talking. It could be like thatched roof cottages and. I mean, I'm just saying. I said in the beginning, I thought like this theory about the Mad Marquis. I liked it. Maybe it's because I'm a Batman fan. And I looked at like this being
Bruce
an old
Wayne.
time Batman. Yeah, because it is like Bruce Wayne, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe the Batman comic strip got its idea from this. Who knows? From Spring Hill Jack. But I like it. So I also promised to tell you like. How much trouble these guys and the Marquis de Waterford actually caused. So it's interesting. In my little bit of research, I found out that the description of which you've heard, going out and painting the town red. You've heard that, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's actually tied back to him. So apparently one time he was like going through like a gate to get into the city with all of his friends after being out drunk and didn't have the right documentation or whatever. And they like overpowered the guard and they were in the process there, during the day of painting the gates into the city, into the location red. And they took all of the paint and painted the guard and painted the whole area red, kind of like as vandals. And they say that that's where the term or description of painting the town red came from.
Now, that's interesting. That is a strange thing, because you do wonder, like, I never thought of where painting the town red come from. It usually meant kind of going out on some type of crazy, purportedly exciting night, drinking and gallivanting, right?
Yeah.
But here you have this guy that physically and his cronies were taking red paint.
Yep. And this was a toll gate. Okay, so to enter the Thorpe End toll gate that they came to, and
how about painting the guard?
Exactly. I mean, they're real troublemakers.
Yeah, they were definitely out there, shall we say?
Yep. Yeah, they say in that event, a policeman tried to intervene, and he was beaten up a bit and painted red as well.
I'm laughing, but what?
These guys are crazy. So I mean, it could be that. I'm just saying. I'm going back. Most of the time we attribute this to demonic, magic, right?
Right.
And in this case, I still come back to Spring Hill Jack. I think was like an olden day Batman of sorts. Perhaps not to insult Batman or Bruce Wayne. He was fighting evil. The Marquis de Waterford might have just been causing some trouble. For sure.
I'm visualizing Batman and Robin climbing up the side of a building with having thrown their batarangs, and you know how they just grabbed that little flimsy rope.
Oh yeah.
And then the camera would show them, just climbing up the side of the building
with
like
their
it was
feet
nothing.
with their feet on the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, and then some lady with curlers in her hair would open a window and say, "Hi, Batman."
Hey, Batman, how you doing?
Yeah, and then he'd say, like, "We're just out fighting crime, citizen.
We're making the world a safer place, citizen. Please go back to whatever you were doing." So then they climb up the building and picture Spring Hill Jack standing up there with some kind of mechanical springs on his feet, and a face like the Joker, right, I'm sure, and a big cape on and a little helmet with red lights inside of it or whatever, something glowing red. Of course, they didn't have lights back in helmets back then, but who knows, some kind of chemical thing going on. And cackling at Batman. And what would Robin say? "Holy spring and shock absorbers, Batman."
You're absolutely right, Robin.
So, Bill, that's what we have in cryptids and double underline other oddities in the news this week.
Yeah, that is definitely an oddity for all time.
Yeah, and by the way, folks, next time around, there have been some new sightings of Mothman around Chicago, and it's very likely in our next podcast we're going to be covering some of these additional sightings and perhaps rumors of a cover-up on Mothman sightings as well.
Yeah, I look forward to that because you're right, Kev. There's been a lot going on around Chicago. And, the first time I heard of Spring Heel Jack was a long time ago through the lips of a guy named Lionel Fanthorpe, an old-time, I think he's a British storyteller. And I was like, wow, what a crazy, unusual story.
Very cool.
And he had a lot of old stories he would tell from that region. And he was very good at it, presenting it in a way where you'd be like, wow, that was pretty good, Lionel. That was really good, I don't know what happened to that guy. I haven't heard him in a long time. He could have been old. I have no idea how old the fellow was when I first started hearing him, so I don't know.
Cool.
But
what do you got for us this week, Bill?
Well, I've got a couple of. The first one is very short. I think we'll do the second one too. This account is purportedly a factual excerpt from a diary of a woman named Mary Skelton. Now, this goes back into the 1800s. It was from a diary that she kept while heading west in the formation of the early days of our nation. So it's a snippet. I'm going to tell you what was contained in this snippet. And then, of course, it's up to conjecture what exactly this was. But the description is going to make you think, as I do, Bigfoot. We had been on the trail for many days now. By my own accounting, 59. The men deemed it necessary to rest our animals and hunt for a spell. Now that we have found a seemingly suitable location for both of our needs, which is to rest and hunt, settling on good water, grass, and ample timber to find their mark. Last evening, we were all settled down for a night's rest. Many of the gentlemen stood watch by the fire, while the women and children slept. At the rear was our chuck wagon, which contained our provisions. Since the men had had good success over the past 2 days, they were smoking the meat from the previous day's kills while we slept. We hoped that this would be able to sustain us until our journey's end. Some kind of commotion erupted during the night, awakening the entirety of the camp. Knowing that the members of our troop were all accounted for and resting easy, the men were surprised by sudden rocking emanating from the chuck wagon, as well as a large crash. As several of our bravest and stoutest men approached the wagon's rear, a beast of the most hideous appearance and immense proportions leaped upon them from within the wagon, striking one of the men with a fierce blow. It then screamed with such a devilish sound that it sounded almost as a banshee. The remaining men set loose with their arms, I believe she was talking about guns, prevailing upon the beast and killing it. Since we had all been awakened by the ruckus, the entire troop stood gazing at the beast that had been laid to waste under the starlit sky. It was covered in fur from head to toe, having the appearance of being a man-beast. It was taller in stature than any man in our group, and wider than an ox when laying down to rest. The hands and feet were several times that of our own in size. The mouth was agape, and as we viewed the beast's teeth, we could see that they were broad and somewhat yellowed, well worn from apparent age and reason of wear. None would think of making a feast of the creature, although the meat was substantial indeed. Not knowing from where it came or being unfamiliar with the breed, we deemed so to bury the creature where it had come to rest, which was no small feat in and of itself, since it was so massive in size. Well, that's a very strange kind of thing, Kev, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just about to say, so they didn't really talk about how big it is, but they're talking about it being massive in size, so that's
right.
That's good enough.
Larger than anyone in the group.
Right.
And in breadth, or whatever you want to call it, larger than an ox laying down like on its side to rest or something.
Yeah, that's a large beast.
It's just some type of big, funky thing, and it dove out at them, smacked or slammed one of the guys, and then I would imagine they shot the thing to death, because it says the word arms. I think she's talking about
weapons,
guns or pistols or something.
Yeah, weapons. Yeah, and it must have been up in the wagon, right? Maybe looking for some food or something like that.
Snuck over there, snooping around, and crash, boom, bang. It must have knocked something over. They saw the wagon rocking around, and then the crash, and they went over like, what the hell is this? I'm sure they already had their guns drawn.
Right.
At that point. And,
absolutely.
What a crazy thing, though. Larger than any man, and they just kind of buried this thing right where it had dropped.
Pretty wild stuff, Bill.
Yeah. And this second story or account came from up Manitoba way. Again, very interesting indeed. This evidential account was brought to my attention by a woman named Ashley Levesque. This is her testimony regarding that which she and her girlfriend saw in the woods of Manitoba. She says, I'm a freelance software engineer. Firms hire me as needed for periods that range from weeks to months to years, depending on what the work entails. Because of this somewhat makeshift lifestyle, I'm afforded a fair amount of time, which I generally use for exercise and adventure. Cross-country skiing and hiking are the two things I enjoy the most. However, I generally do not go far from home to do either of these, my home being a small chalet-type construct on a plot of land abutting a protected wilderness. I don't remember how much land lies behind me, but it is enormous. So I typically hike and ski there. You couldn't ask for a better location, and in all the years I've been living there, I have not so much as once run into another human being in the woods. In the winter of 2008, my best friend and I broke out the skis for some exercise. We never clock our distance or map our paths. The enormous amount of untouched land affords us a plethora of trails to follow, spanning out in any number of directions, and when the snow has fallen, the potential for pathways is virtually endless. Generally, we go as far as we feel we can and save enough juice for the return home trip. Typically, I would say we could travel between 15 and 20 miles in a single outing. Wow. On this day, we were skiing on pure virgin snow. And if you were to look around, the only visible marks upon it were some small animal tracks here and there, having gotten 10 inches of the white stuff overnight, and the temperature was about 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Fairly deep into our outbound ski, we came upon a debris field, quickly realizing that what we were looking at was the strewn about remnants of a rotten tree's interior. We could see the rotten wood and chips extending about 20 feet or so away from the tree, and it was clear that this destruction had happened this very morning, because there wasn't so much as a flake of snow covering the debris, with the snow having stopped falling around 4 in the morning. We could clearly see the entire area in front of the tree was completely matted down, indicative that something must have stood in front of this decayed tree for some time, tearing apart its interior. We also noticed a straight line of gigantic footprints, both coming to and moving away from the tree, fresh and similar in shape to those of a human. As we crouched down to examine them, we could clearly see toes, slightly splayed apart. Additionally, the big toe was somewhat angled inward, unlike a human's. It was so perfectly imprinted in the snow that it almost looked like it had been cast, with many of the prints still having snow raised up between the individual toes. I snapped out of my skis, standing next to a print in order to size it up against my own. The footprint was approximately 12 inches longer than my ski boot, which would make its length around 24 inches. Its width behind the toes was about twice the size of mine, making that around 10 inches, though it could have been a bit more. Between the snow that had fallen overnight and that which had already been on the ground, there was about a foot of snow in total. The snow was completely compressed within the print, being pressed all the way down to the pine needles. Whatever this thing was had incredible bulk. Even with my boots on and jumping and stomping down into the snow, I couldn't come close to the degree of compression this thing had created while just apparently walking. There was no melt in the prints, and very little snow had collapsed within them. They were very, very fresh, and because there was no wind that day, there was also no freshly blown snow covering their prints either. They were as perfect could be. The stride length of this creature, whatever it may have been, was incredibly long. We laid one of the skis in front of the toes on one print, and even though my ski was about 7 feet long, it came up short of the next print by almost 2 feet. That made these steps almost 9 feet long from toe to toe. We decided to put our skis back on and try to follow the return trail for a while. It paralleled the entry trail for a mile or so before beginning to veer east into the deeper forest, which leads into some heavily timbered areas. After about 2 miles or so, we ran across another tree that had been torn open. This one nothing like the first, as it appeared that this thing had approached another tree thinking that it was more rotten than it actually was. After it had dug into the bark about an inch or two, it most likely found the tree to be still fairly solid at its core. It was apparent to both of us that this thing, whatever it was, had been walking through the timber and sampling decayed trees, as the trail then continued outbound into the forest. With no end in sight, we didn't want to follow any further. Besides, whatever had left these tracks, walking with a 9-foot stride, we weren't looking forward to greeting it in these woods. Now, I had heard of Bigfoot and seen some footage. I had also seen the footprints that supposedly belonged to the abominable snowman in the Himalayas. They went in a straight line across a mountain slope in the middle of nowhere. This beast must have been casually sauntering around the timber trying to scrounge up some food, and I'm sure they have a number of things to survive on. Maybe whatever's in those decayed trees is just another one of many things that it eats. This experience has not prevented me from going into these woods, with many winters having passed since this occurred. And to this day, I have never seen another set of prints. Kind of interesting, Kev, huh?
That's cool. I mean, I love anything with the cross-country skiers up in the snow in Canada. You know, such a great place to spot the hairy man.
I mean, you know, and from many accounts, these critters seem to be a little larger up in Canada. I don't know what that's all about. It may be a breed of the same creature that's just a little bit larger up there, but a 9-foot stride. That's like, what the heck does that relate to in height?
Yeah. I don't know the math on that one.
Yeah, but I'm thinking in my mind 10 plus feet.
Yeah, well, and probably running along too, you know, so with all that power that we hear in some of these accounts.
But very interesting. And again, talk about pristine forest. She's lived there for X amount of years and never saw another human being.
Yeah.
So,
not hard to believe up there. And
yeah.
Great account, Bill, and great combo. 1800s with settlers in the U.S. moving across the country, running into what looks like a giant hairy man, and then going to cross-country skiing in the early 2000s up to frozen tundra Canada.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I told you my buddy Rick had told me about his encounter with the sighting up in Canada, Alberta. You know, I believe that guy.
Sure.
You know,
why not?
And he was a spot on, righteous kind of guy. And I have no reason to doubt the things that he said to me. And that's why he shared them with me, because I guess he figured he could. Not looking for anything, no pride, no glory, just this is how it is, man.
Yep.
You know, this is how it is, whether you believe it or not, you know.
No doubt about it, yeah.
So I have no gripe with anybody. And there's all kinds of people out there nitpicking at this and that, and that's fine. But it's just not who I am. So if you've seen something, say something, folks. Reach out to us on our contact link, BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com. Let me know what you've seen. And I talk to a lot of people, call them up, have conversations. I've developed some friendships. And I'm always glad to hear what you've heard. I'm particularly perplexed, though, Kev, about one thing. A lot of people that come to me and say things, some of which you've read on the air, I've tried to reach out to them. They never call me. They never get back to me, and I don't understand
I think
what that's all
sending
about.
an email and calling on the phone are two different things, Bill. You know, I mean, it's no problem. And they might be super busy.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And maybe they prefer the discretion of just using an email and leaving it at that.
Yeah, don't have the time to do the whole phone thing, you know.
Yeah.
I know it's really hard for me to get on the phone compared to sending an email or a text. So.
Or maybe they're spring heel jack in the evening and just don't have time.
Ooh, that's another theory. Boing, boing, boing. All right. Well, speaking of contacting us at BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com, let's move over to some listener mail because we got some good ones this week. And the first one comes from our buddy Chris from, as he spells it, Missouri.
Oh.
And he says, hey, KJ, this happened a few days ago. And he puts a link in of this story that I hinted at the beginning of some more significant Mothman sightings at O'Hare Airport. And I'm definitely going to cover that, Chris. I went and looked at it again. Of course, I've done multiple stories on Mothman, both the classic from West Virginia and then the modern day, so to speak, of all of these encounters around O'Hare. But this story you sent over, thank you so much. It's fantastic. And Chris also writes, I'll be looking all around next time I fly through O'Hare Airport, that's for sure. And me too, Chris. I was just on a plane this week out in Denver, but I didn't fly through O'Hare. But maybe next time I'll re-vector just to go through there to look for the Mothman.
Hey, Kev, while we're on the subject of O'Hare, maybe put it on your list of hit parades, your hit parade list. See what you can dig up about that sighting of the giant UFO apparently landing at O'Hare a number of years back.
Yeah, that's that triangular craft.
At the time, I was caught up in a lot of different things, and I didn't really get to follow up at it in that moment. I don't know what was going on in life and whatnot.
There's a big triangular one that they've seen around O'Hare and around the Midwest, too. So, yeah, I got that on the list. And then Chris ends by saying, P.S., very importantly here, praying for Bill's wife. God bless. So, thank you, Chris.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. And appreciate your input. Very interesting indeed. Yeah, I looked at that clip that Chris sent over, and that was just one of the latest of witnesses that have seen something. And in that circumstance, it seems that they were trying to be suppressed by the powers that be.
Yes, absolutely. So pretty interesting. So, we'll definitely cover it. And then speaking of UFOs, Bill, we got some input from Neil from the UK. And he says, "Hi, I know you don't deal with UFOs that often, but there's a case of a young boy's encounter with alien beings in Gateshead, Tyne, in the northeast of England, where with one of the aliens looking more like a Bigfoot than an alien."
Well, there you go. Doesn't surprise me.
I know. We have accounts like that. And the video is called The Gateshead Grey, and it's on YouTube. The person speaking on the video is the young boy who had the encounter. Now he's actually in his 70s, so pretty interesting.
Wow.
So the video was probably made about 10 years ago on YouTube. It doesn't get the attention it deserves, as I think it's probably one of the best cases of an alien encounter in the UK. Please, could you and your brother give it some attention that I think it deserves, and also we give you a thumbs up as the best podcast out there. So thank you, Neil. We would definitely look into that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and here we go, Kev. A guy 70 years old now, kind of coming out of the closet a little bit. Maybe he's learning a little bit about the electronic media and just kind of getting it off his chest a little bit,
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody comes around at some point in their life where they just start to talk a little bit about things maybe they never talked about.
Right, 100%.
Yeah, so, we'll check into that. And thanks for chiming in with us. Again, UFO, Bigfoot. It's not all of the encounters, but it's definitely a piece of them where this is going on. What's going on? Have no idea. But, we report on it, we represent it. And by the way, folks, I have my new book coming out, UFO Sightings and Encounters, Volume 1. That's in the works. I hope sooner than later. It's done. The cover is done. The interior is done. All of the copyright is done. I'm just waiting for it to be kind of finalized in like assembly, and then of course put up on Amazon. And of course I'll tell everybody when that happens. It just hasn't happened yet.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, and now we have a note coming in, and this one's a good set of questions for you, Bill, from Joanna. Joanna doesn't say where she is, but the subject is question about red eye. So this is that episode I did about red eye in New Jersey. So she says, "Hello, I'm a big fan of your podcast, and I'm almost finished with your 4th book and counting. As I'm listening to the red eye encounters, I am confused. Excuse me. They are all Bigfoot encounters, right? I mean, a huge chunk of Bigfoot encounters describe red glowing eyes. So what makes the New Jersey red eye different? Do they just want to be different than the rest of the country so they can come up with their own name for Bigfoot? Maybe one of your fans from New Jersey can shed some light on this. Thanks for making me laugh, Joanna.
Yeah, what do you think of that, Kev? I read that, and I was kind of betwixt and between with reading it, and I sat back and I was like, huh?
I think sometimes, people see stuff in different places and it comes up as, with a legend and a name associated with the legend. And, my own thing is maybe they just didn't think of it as a Bigfoot when they saw it. They thought it was something else. And, when you hear all the accounts, especially on a Bigfoot podcast, it's very easy to say, well, that's another Bigfoot. And perhaps it is. But I think,
Right.
Sometimes people see this stuff and they don't know what a Bigfoot is. I know that's hard to believe, but could be, right?
Yeah, they had no knowledge of the large feet and possibly that it had been named before somewhere else. Of course, the old Indian names like Sasquatch and people over here on the East Coast 150 years ago had no idea of that name, had never heard it.
Right, like
So
the
if they
old Teddy Roosevelt story that he wrote about, and they called it a goblin, back in the 1800s, which I imagine was just a name for some creepy thing that you didn't understand.
Yeah, and was trying to rip your head off.
And Joanna, I still can't figure out why these folks in New Jersey call it red eye and not red eyes. I mean, how about that? But let's hear from somebody around New Jersey that knows about red eye. 2 questions. Is it a Bigfoot, do you think? And then the second question, why the heck do you call it red eye and not red eyes? Or do you don't understand that question? And then I'll understand.
Yeah, what if it only had one eye and the other one got poked out?
It's a pirate. It's a pirate Bigfoot. Hey. All right, Bill. And our last email comes in from Lori from Maryland. And she says, good morning. I've become a big fan of your podcast. I started listening last spring, and I enjoy every episode. I've gotten my husband hooked, too. We love the intro. It's a freaking Sasquatch. I bought my husband Volume 3 for Christmas. I couldn't find 1 and 2 on Amazon. We have also added 2 Bigfoot shot glasses to our collection. Our son goes to Penn State, and on our drives to and from Maryland, we take a more scenic route. Every trip, my husband says, it's a good day to see a Bigfoot. Just wanted to tell you how much we enjoy the show. You've made a believer of me. Happy New Year, Lori.
Interesting.
Well, Happy New Year, Lori.
I hear this from a lot of people. Sometimes the second time through, after I tell them, well, I just did the search and it's right there, in reference to finding the books. But Amazon's a little weird. Sometimes I queue up the name of the book and a few of them show up together, but not all of them. But they're all there. And the best thing I can tell you is to specifically type in Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings Encounters Volume 2. The same thing, and it will bring you directly to that book. I don't know how they operate and why it is what it is, but I assure you, everything is there, and everything is there in audio format at Audible and even on Amazon, because Amazon and Audible are joined at the hip. Everything is there. There's nothing missing. So just do a little diligence and be specific, and you'll find what you're looking for.
Awesome. Well, that's a great episode this week, Bill. Nice job on those 2 accounts, and keep an eye out for Spring-Heeled Jack. And those of you in the southeastern United States, of course, it'll be in the rearview mirror after you listen to this podcast. But be careful in that snow and ice storm. Hope everything went okay, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, you always got to be careful in this winter weather. You don't get injured. You don't do anything stupid. And remember, your cars don't behave the same when you're out on the road. So
and most importantly, don't run out of bread and milk.
yeah, go out and buy 9 loaves and 6 gallons now. But it's just the 2 of us, WJ. All right, buy 4 gallons and 5 loaves, and a double pack of eggs. I don't know. I don't get that whole thing.
Yeah,
right?
who knows? I was in the store last night, not because the snowstorm's coming, and I looked. I was walking by, and the shelf had no bread on it. I was like, "Oh yeah, it's going to snow on Sunday."
Yeah, it's just unbelievable.
That's how I tell the weather. I look and see if there's bread and milk.
Yeah, I mean, I only buy a loaf or 2 of bread when I'm running out, and I never change.
Yep.
You know, I only have so much around that I'm going to use. One is usually frozen. One is open. If I want to have a little toast, a little and then I take the frozen one out. And when that one's just about gone, I go buy another loaf or 2.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, don't forget to buy 40 rolls of toilet paper and 40 rolls of paper towels while you're out there buying your 6 loaves of bread. It's unreal. Well, folks, great episode. And if you should find yourself snow skiing in Manitoba, or anywhere else for that matter, I would advise one thing. Always carry more gun than you think you're gonna need. Sleep tight.